Hey everyone, welcome to the Swine.it YouTube channel. This is a new series of content that we're producing with a different format from the Swine.it Podcast. With me, I have Dr. Scott D, Director of Applied Research at Pipestone Vet Services. How are you, Dr. D?
Hey, I'm doing great. Good to see you.
Yes.
Thanks for the opportunity to join you today.
Yes, I appreciate your time again. And if you've missed Dr. D's episode in the podcast, go there and you're going to find it. And we have Dr. D's bio as well here in the description below. So with that, Dr. D, what's the goal here today? I know we discussed a little bit about the topic. So I think the goal is basically chat a little bit about coronaviruses. There's the human situation going on right now, and then there's a lot of knowledge on the pig side. So first question is coronavirus or there's different types there?
Yeah, well, that's a good starting point. Coronavirus is a group of viruses, and they're quite host specific. So some infect people, some infect pigs, cattle, other species as well. So they're very specific, but they're basically built the same way. They're roughly the same size, the same shape, the same nucleic acid, the same envelope. So there's a lot of similarities, but it really depends on their ability to attach to a specific cell type and infect that host, be it a human cell or be it a pig cell. They're very different in that aspect, but as far as how they're basically built, they're the same.
Very interesting. Yeah, all right. Interesting. And how about the current coronavirus? So the COVID-19, or I forgot what they call SARS-CoV-2, I believe. Is that I forgot how they define that right now. But so the current coronavirus, is it an issue for pigs and pork?
No, not at all. This virus only infects people. The COVID-19, it has a specific receptor for the human that actually the University of Minnesota just published some really nice stuff from the veterinary school showing that receptor. And it's human specific. It can't infect pigs. It can't contaminate pork. People can't get COVID-19 from eating pork or being around pigs. The challenge we have with COVID-19 is keeping our workers healthy, so they can go to the farms and take care of their animals. That's really the challenge that veterinarians and the swine industry has with COVID-19, is just keeping our labor force up and running, because there's so much illness around the world. So that's the primary concern about COVID to the swine industry, really.
Right, and keep the packing plants running and everything. And it's, I mean, clearly a very fluid situation. And by the time, we're going to publish this and things are a lot of new research coming out, right? I saw one Dr. did this week. I haven't read in full details, but I think they tested the COVID-19 with multiple species, and I think ferret, if I pronounce that correctly, ferret and cats as well. There were some interesting findings there. Pigs, there were no evidence there, as you said. So it's an interesting. I think we're gonna learn a lot more here in the next several weeks, right? But no evidence in pigs, so that's great.
Yeah. It looks like the virus, again, quoting the University of Minnesota work from the veterinary school, which I'm proud of as an alumnus, came from bats and jumped into the spiny anteater potentially, and then mutated its receptor to bind to the human cell. So there was a couple of mammals involved potentially in the chain of transmission, but the good news is none of them were pig-related mammals. There was, again, a bat and an anteater, which is kind of similar to SARS. If you go back and look at SARS, which is a relative of COVID, it came from bats and then went into these civet cats, which are like raccoons in Asia. And it jumped there into people. So it does have a mammalian link, but the good news is pigs aren't involved at all in that link.
Very good. And I think China started some cities in China are starting to ban some of the live markets, and that's time bomb. But from that standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so cultural. That'll be difficult to do because that's how people get their food every day.
Right.
And we've been worried about that with ASF, African swine fever virus, as a point of contact and contamination for fomites for the ASF challenge to the United States. So the live wet market there, that's a challenge, but that's a cultural, foundation to their life. So to try to change that is going to be very, very difficult. Even here in California, where I'm spending time with my wife, a lot of people go to the market every day to get their produce and things. And now they're making grocery lists like I'm used to, say, from the Midwest. Mm-hmm. A lot of people out here, they go to the market every day and they purchase fresh vegetables and fruits and things. And that's getting challenged a little bit too.
Yes. I'm using a lot of the delivery grocers now when it's available. A lot of stuff is out of stock, but that's I personally hate going grocery shopping, so it's been help. Yeah. I like that part.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that when I go to the markets here, I see a lot of what we use in the pig industry. We call them clean dirty lines. So they're designated areas where there's actually tape or paint on the floor, and people flow into the store in a certain direction and end up at the cash register, and they don't cross these lines, very similar to what we've done in pig farm biosecurity for many, many years now. So it's interesting to see that human behavior now being applied to the purchases of food at the grocery store.
Right. Yeah, that's very cool. And even just when we do have to get outside, and when I got back, for example, I started thinking about the same principles we use in farms, and I was even teaching, my mother-in-law and my wife about what we do, and I think that is cool. And that's one of the focus of this conversation as well, right, Dr. D? Can you share a little bit, the experience with PEDV, which is swine coronavirus in 2013-14? How did the vet profession respond so quickly? Can you share some of that?
Yeah, that's a good story. Yeah, I think your listening audience knows that we've dealt with coronaviruses in pigs for many decades. TGE virus is a coronavirus. Porcine respiratory coronavirus obviously is one as well. And then the big one was, like you say, 2013, when PEDV virus came from China, probably through feed, and contaminated our national herd. And what I remember in the previous conversation you and I had, I was really critical of the research enterprises when PRRS was being evaluated and worked on, because there was no collaboration. That was very different when it came to PED. I was really proud of our industry and our profession, our universities, how everyone really rallied and organized, research, organized, shared information from farm to farm. It was a very different mentality and spirit of collaboration with PED as it was to the early days of PRRS. So that was a step in the right direction for our industry. And that's why I think our industry will survive, be it other challenges with diseases, because we've got this collaborative nature now built into our DNA that we didn't have in the past. So yeah, that was a very different approach back then versus what happened with the early days of PRRS.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to see how that happened, as far as being able to, very large production systems were able to get rid of it very quickly too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you think about it. It got into the U.S. sometime probably in 2013. I think the index cases were April of 2013. Before too long, though, we isolated the virus. We had a PCR test. We had a serologic test. We understood the role of feed. We developed elimination protocols for cleaning up farms. And the vaccines came along too in a very short period of time. All that got done. And so that's a real tribute, I think, to the swine veterinary profession and the swine industry, And I think my wish is, and maybe it's too late now, but I think if swine veterinarians could be involved in the current COVID cases and help with human medicine and the government, I think swine veterinarians could bring a great deal of value to what's happening right now with COVID, just based on our knowledge of coronaviruses. Remember, they're built the same way. You can kill them the same way. Disinfectants are effective, independent of species, of host, It lives so long outside the host. It likes certain weather conditions. It's very similar in what, the things we've learned from PED, I think we could be very helpful in helping the human medical profession. So it's just a wish. I'm hoping that we get involved at some time to assist as we can, because I think we're some of the world experts when it comes to dealing with coronavirus epidemics.
Right. Yes, that makes total sense. Let me ask you: Can we, from the swine industry or veterinary community, learn anything from the COVID-19 response? Maybe the answer is no, but just some brainstorm there. Anything that you see that you're like, okay, well, that sounds interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, there are some similarities to what's happening with COVID-19. They have a new test, and as we know from veterinary medicine, every time we get a new PCR test, all of a sudden we find whatever organism we are looking for, we find it everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we'll learn from this virus, I believe, has been in the U.S. longer than 2020. I think it's been present in at least Q4 of last year. I think when we get serological tests, which are coming now, we'll see that the population, at least the U.S. national population, there could have been some exposure earlier than what's thought. I remember my family, and me included, last Q4 of 2019, having fairly aggressive respiratory issues that wouldn't really go away. And we finally fought through them. We thought it must be flu. We just did the things we do for flu, and eventually we got over it. I'm wondering how many of those cases were actually COVID-19. Right. Because I've heard that story from lots of other people that there's some people that think this has been around for a while. So it's what we can learn. I think it's what we can teach in this case. It's, we can teach that these viruses, we know how to handle them. We know how to diagnose them. We understand epidemiology. Again, I think we can help a great deal. And then obviously we'll learn from whatever the human cases tell us and what the science says, but it takes a while to do all these studies to figure all this stuff out. So I think the more the human profession could rely on the veterinary profession, the better off they'd be.
Yes. Is there anything, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there anything from the COVID-19 response around the globe or in the US that you're like, okay, well, that you've seen from the government's response that you think, based on your experience, that could have been done differently?
Well, I think there's been a lot of discussion, and I'm certainly not on the front lines of COVID, but I've just been reading and listening. I think there's some concern that there should have been more testing done in the United States earlier. You look at South Korea, who seems to be the country that really has turned this thing around the fastest. They were doing a lot of testing early on, and they had those drive-by test facilities where you could do a lot of people in a short period of time. That's one thing I think we've learned, is the quicker we can understand the epidemiology of the disease, the better we'll be at reacting. That's maybe one observation, again, from somebody on the sideline reading and listening, that some of the human professionals are concerned about, professionals from the medical field, that we didn't do enough testing early enough.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting to me too how these coronaviruses behave. Our PED picked out the young piglet, right? So they picked out the 7-day-old pig or younger, and really was aggressive in that age bracket. Mm-hmm. Older pigs basically had diarrhea for a day or two and they got over things. It seems like COVID is picking on a subpopulation of the human population, the elderly people. Right. specifically those in healthcare, long-term healthcare facilities with pre-existing conditions. I feel so sorry for those people because of what they're going through. And I think that's the majority of the mortality that's happening right now. But it's interesting how the virus seems to pick out a real at-risk subpopulation of its herd, be it a herd of pigs or be it a population of people, and really attack there. So it's just kind of one of the commonalities between what I saw with PED and what looks like is happening with COVID-19. Again, really sorry for the elderly folks who have gone through such a terrible time. But it's an interesting observation epidemiologically.
Yes. Yeah, that's tough. Let me ask you another thing that I saw that I thought was interesting, at more from the human side, but some smart thermometers. There's a smart thermometer company that you can see they have the expected level of illness, so fever, and throughout the year, and they have the confidence interval there by state, and then you I could see, I was actually my county here, I could see that it was like 5 percentage points more illness than normal. So I was like, wow, that's amazing, the value of just being able to have everything in the cloud from that.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. There are some technological advances that the human side has that we don't have, although we're developing those. We're monitoring barns, looking at environmental conditions in barns, looking for increased fever in the populations in barns. Obviously, there's a lot of people getting their temperature taken before they come into barns using some of the immediate quick read thermometers. So that's a good thing. So there is some adaptation of rapid technology at the veterinary level, but human medicine always has that advantage over us because there's so many more dollars there for advancement. But maybe that's something we could potentially learn about too, is how do we be more proactive in measuring our pig populations for per acute illness.
Right. You start thinking about the whole, I see a few production systems that already have the smart farm, or they're testing a few different technologies. And I don't know, but it'd be nice to have just some type of gun, the thermometer gun.
That's coming. That's coming. We're testing some of it in Pipestone, some of our barns. We're looking at some of that. Obviously, you have to understand its cost and its reliability under those difficult conditions we work in pig facilities. But it's a good thing to at least check out, I think.
Right. Very cool, Dr. D. Anything else on this topic before we wrap up?
No, again, to everyone out there struggling now with COVID, I wish everyone the best, and hopefully we can get through this together. And I do, I still think it's a good idea if the human medical profession would involve swine veterinarians in this crisis, because again, as we're talking about, I think our group knows more about managing coronaviruses than any group. And as we started our conversation, coronavirus is coronavirus, at least as far as how it's structurally built. So there's some value we can bring. And so we've reached out. I know that the AVMA is doing a good job of spreading the news, how veterinarians can help. And again, I think this is a good discussion we've had. Hopefully somebody will listen to it and kind of get that same idea and reach out, because we're all here in this together.
Absolutely. Pretty big deal. Pretty concerning as well from the level, just the economic impact as well. Yeah. Last few weeks being very, very tough there.
Yeah, we didn't even get into that.
Well, thanks so much, Dr. D. I will invite everyone that is watching to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button there. If you have any questions for Dr. D, you can drop in the comments as well, and we'll make sure to relay those. And that's it. I hope you have safe travels. I know you're California, Dr. D there, and stay healthy there.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.